Good morning, this is Ben. I'm going to respond to how to prove God doesn't exist in 3 minutes by Dhorpatan. Anyway, first of all, you seem to have encountered the Coulomb cosmological argument in some form or fashion by William Lane Craig. Maybe a video who wants to read it, right? And before we go any further, just let me say this: when you make your argument here, and you said, if they say God is infinite, then their God does not exist, since actual infinities do not exist, and then you add within the universe, and then expect people to respond by talking about outside the universe, or it doesn't. He can somehow. The laws of the universe don't apply. Like, you didn't have to say in the universe. That's great that you said it, but you go to length to explain that the universe is everything that exists. So you could have just said, then their God does not exist, since actual infinities do not exist. I mean, if you're going to define, within the universe as everything that exists, then if it doesn't exist within the universe, then it just doesn't exist. Anyway, the main problem I see here, let's say I'm a Christian, which I am, but let's imagine that I come to an atheist and I say, time, can't have been going on forever. There's infinite regress of past events. It's impossible. So, blah, 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 blah. What caused the universe to exist? And you've got to say, well, the universe began, existing, without infinite cause, without some infinitely powerful cause. But that's exactly what you're saying is impossible. You're saying that you have to have some infinite God to fix the infinite regress problem. But then you say that you can't have infinite things, actual infinities. This doesn't just apply to God, okay? Anything, this whole punch, has it existed forever? Well, there can't be an infinite regress of causes that brought the hole punch to exist. And you say, well, the only way we can fix the infinite regress problem is with some actually infinite thing. Actually infinite things can't exist, therefore the hole punch can't exist. So you've defined a situation here where nothing can exist. And furthermore, I don't know if you should really jump on William Lane Craig's bandwagon so fast about the actual infinities do not exist, with his Hilbert's Hotel example. It's not as complicated as he makes it. Let's imagine all the integers, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the negatives. Or let's just do the real numbers. It's like 1 to forever, right? Well, if you go with just the prime numbers, which is every other number, well, not the prime, no, let's go with the odd numbers, or even the prime numbers, because there's got to be less prime numbers than all the real numbers, right? Well, how many of those are there? Just as many as the whole set. And you say, well, you're skipping one every time. That's impossible, and that's where William Lane Craig is on this. But he's not exactly in the super majority opinion there. Simple reality is that when you have boundlessness, the same rules don't apply. And in fact, the traditional mathematical way of defining an infinite set, or an actual infinity, or a transfinite set, is a set that has subsets of it, like the set of real numbers would have a subset of it that's prime numbers that is the same size as the whole set. That's not necessarily a logical contradiction when you allow for the set to have no end to it, to be infinite. Exactly how we would work with infinities and in math, or different things, but there's no actual contradiction there because we're saying that the set is infinite. But William Lane Craig's argument doesn't just rest on his insistence that actually infinite things do not exist. This is something that he's not exactly on the, he has a problem with God being actually infinite, and he believes that God came to exist inside of time, and these are some of his more personal views about God that not every Christian apologist or philosopher would jump on the bandwagon with. And so, William Lane Craig, like a lot of people, has stuff he says and then other stuff he says, and you don't necessarily, take it all at face value. And even as an atheist, I would just, you seem like an atheist because you want to disprove the existence of God. I would warn you against letting an atheist or even, someone I think is a wonderful Christian philosopher smuggle in something without checking it out. Like, that's a problem, So, I mean, I guess for you, the question would be, well, does Kalam's cosmological argument, does it, is it sound or not? And, basically, premise one, since you didn't really comment on that, I won't get into it, but, premise two, did the universe begin to exist? William Lane Craig basically has 3 lines of contention for that. The actual infinities, which we'll say no more about, since I'm not persuaded there. The infinite regression problem, and then the simple physical findings, and the scientific observations. And so the scientific observations is one that you're going to have to research greatly to see where everyone stands. And then there's the infinite regression. And the infinite regression, works. Today can't be the day at the end of forever. So, and this is really, this part of the argument is really, pulling from the past. This is, one of the older parts of the argument. This is something that's stood the test of time a little longer than some of the other stuff he's trying to introduce in, or else borrowing from physics. But yeah, I just wanted to let you know that what you're saying would apply to everything, because it couldn't have it either is infinite and doesn't need a cause, but actual infinities do not exist, or it's infinite regression and infinite regressions do not exist. Either it's got an infinite regression of causes, which requires an actual infinity to start it, and actual infinity does not exist, or it's an actual infinity itself, blah blah blah, nothing can exist. Actual infinities aren't necessarily a problem. They just are counterintuitive and harder to think about, but I recommend spending some time looking at infinite sets and checking it out, because it's something hard to wrap your mind around, but so is God.